Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands. Today, we're taking some time to reflect on, well, just an extraordinary life, a journey that's really become part of history.
hmm It's the story of a man who endured immense suffering, didn't he?
He did, and somehow through that he found a path to freedom, not just for himself, but for his people.
A huge story. So this is going to be quite an immersive exploration, right?
Exactly. We hope you'll sort of reflect with us as we trace these key moments, this incredible path he took.
It started in a very small village, Movezo, in the Transkei. That was July 18, 1918,
And the name he was given, Rolilala.
which means troublemaker, interestingly enough.
Yeah, maybe a hint of what was to come, perhaps.
Perhaps. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakaniswa, was a local chief.
Then a counselor. He resisted colonial authority quietly, but he resisted.
And that had consequences. He lost his position, his lands.
A very powerful early lesson, you'd imagine, about the cost of defiance.
Definitely. And all this time, he's growing up immersed in Isosa culture, the traditions.
In that philosophy of Ubuntu.
Yes, that deep sense of interconnectedness. We are because others are. That really shaped him.
You can see how that would inform his later life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then, when he was just 9, his father passed away.
Which must have been a huge turning point.
It was. He became the ward of Chief Chongantabada Lindibo in Kwanu,
And that was, in a way, fortunate. It led to his education.
a very rare opportunity back then. Chief Chongantaba made sure he went to mission schools.
So a completely different world opens up. English, history, geography.
Right. And Christianity, too. And it was at school he was given the name Nelson.
So these experiences are broadening his horizons, beyond his immediate community.
They really are. But even then, you have to think, he must have started noticing the racial divides.
Oh, absolutely. Even if subtle at first. The sort of pervasive injustice in South African society.
Little things, unequal chances, just that constant undercurrent,
Mm-hmm. At the same time, he's participating in traditional ceremonies.
which emphasized leadership as service, as responsibility. That sense of duty was instilled early on.
And then further education followed Corkberry, Healdtown.
Yeah, and that exposed him to even broader political ideas, stories of resistance elsewhere, democratic ideals.
Things bubbling up globally at that time.
Exactly. And then came Fort Hare University.
The only residential university for Black Africans then.
Right, and this is where you start to see the beginnings of organized resistance taking shape around him.
Fort Hare sounds like it was a real crucible, politically, intellectually.
It really was. He encountered African nationalism there, this idea of self-determination, African unity.
A powerful call, especially in that context.
Very. But even at Fort Hare, which was relatively progressive, he still experienced the pettiness of apartheid.
Those daily indignities, the sort of casual cruelty.
Exactly, and that fuels this growing sense of outrage, you imagine.
So he gets involved in student politics.
He does. He was elected to the Student Representative Council, his first real taste of organized action.
And there was a boycott.
Yes, against new rules that limited student autonomy, he took part.
And that didn't go down well with the authorities.
No. He refused to apologize for his role, got suspended, left without finishing his degree.
Wow, that's a defining moment, isn't it? Sticking to his principles, whatever the cost.
It really shows his character early on. Then he actually fled an arranged marriage back home
Another break from tradition. Where did he go?
to Johannesburg with his cousin Justice, seeking a different kind of life. Johannesburg in the 1940s? Quite a shock, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Stark contrasts. Huge wealth right next to grinding poverty.
All divided along rigid racial lines, the injustice must have been just unavoidable.
He worked different jobs.
Yeah, first as a mine security guard, then as an articled clerk at a liberal law firm,
So he's seeing the law up close.
and seeing it used as a tool of oppression, not as a shield for rights. A stark education.
It's around this time he connects with the ANC.
Yes, the African National Congress.
Yeah.
Back then, they were advocating for change peacefully.
So he's engaging in political discussions, finding his people, so to speak.
Exactly, finding a community. Meanwhile, he's living in places like Alexandra.
Crowded townships, witnessing the daily hardships firsthand.
Yeah, these weren't abstract issues for him. This was the reality for his neighbors, his community.
And the law firm job, Witkin, Sadelsky, and Eidelman. Did that offer any hope?
Well, It exposed him to ideals of justice and democracy, even as he saw them denied all around him.
And he kept studying law.
He did, through the University of South Africa, kind of arming himself with the tools he'd need.
He seems to gravitate towards a more militant faction within the ANC.
Yes, a younger generation was rising up. They felt the older ways, the patient appeals weren't working.
Impatience growing.
Understandably. And his friendship with Walter Sisulu became crucial here.
Sisulu was a key figure.
Huge. He introduced him to a wider network of activists, forming these incredibly strong bonds.
Bonds that would last through everything.
Through everything. Then 1944, a really pivotal year.
What happened then?
He, Sisulu, Oliver Tambo, and others co-founded the ANC Youth League.
Injecting new energy,
Yeah.
a new direction.
Exactly. Demanding mass mobilization, a more assertive stance. Their manifesto really emphasized youth leadership.
So his belief in African nationalism is solidifying now. The right to self-govern, to live with dignity.
It's crystallizing. And in that same busy year, 1944, he marries Evelyn Mace.
Starting a family while deeply involved in activism, that's a lot to balance.
It is. But the political situation was about to get much, much worse.
This is when the National Party comes to power, 1948.
Yes. And they formalize apartheid, codify racial segregation into law, into every part of life.
Intensifying everything.
Massively.
Yeah.
So in response, he throws himself into organizing. Boycotts, strikes, protests.
The Defiance Campaign of '52, that was a big one.
It was. Nationwide nonviolent resistance against unjust laws. He was a key leader.
And that led to his first arrest.
It did. During that campaign, his first real taste of the state's repression.
But he didn't back down. He even started a law firm.
That same year, remarkably, with Oliver Tambo, South Africa's first black law firm.
What a symbol that must have been, a resource for people facing discrimination.
A huge symbol of hope. By the early 50s, he's a very prominent leader.
Traveling the country.
Yeah, rallying support for the Defiance Campaign, giving these powerful speeches about dignity, about nonviolence.
How did the government react to his growing influence?
With banning orders, trying to silence him, restricting his movement, stopping him from speaking publicly.
But did it work?
Not really. His influence kept growing. He just continued working underground, organizing, inspiring.
He was involved in the Congress of the People, too, wasn't he, in '55?
Played a key role in orchestrating it. This gathering in Kliptown.
Different anti-apartheid groups coming together.
Yes, and they adopted the Freedom Charter.
Which laid out a vision for a democratic, non-racial South Africa. Fundamental rights for all.
A foundational document. But the state struck back again.
The treason trial.
In 1956. He and 155 other activists arrested, accused of treason.
A massive trial. How long did it last?
5 years. A clear attempt to just cripple the movement by targeting all its leaders.
But they used the trial itself as a platform, right?
They did. Turn the tables. Exposed the injustice of apartheid right there in the courtroom. Indicted the whole system.
And the outcome.
Acquitted, finally, in 1961. But the personal cost was immense. His marriage to Evelyn ended around this time.
The strain must have been incredible.
Unimaginable. And the acquittal didn't change the state's brutality. He was starting to reach a painful conclusion.
That peaceful protest alone wasn't enough.
Exactly. And then came Sharpeville, March 1960.
The massacre, police firing on peaceful protesters.
A brutal, horrifying turning point. It just shattered any lingering hope of peaceful negotiation for many.
And the government banned the ANC afterward.
Banned the ANC, other organizations too. Closed off legitimate avenues for protest.
So this leads to the decision, the very difficult decision.
To form Umkhonto we Sizwe, Spear the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC founded in 1961.
It wasn't a decision taken lightly, you sense.
Not at all. Yeah. It was a direct response to the state's violence, a feeling that all other doors had been slammed shut.
And the initial focus was sabotage.
Yes. Targeting government installations, power lines, infrastructure, trying deliberately to avoid civilian casualties at first.
And he had to go underground. Became the Black Pimpernel.
That's right. Evading capture, moving constantly, organizing resistance in secret. Quite remarkable.
Then he traveled abroad, clandestinely.
In 1962, yeah. To rally international support, build connections with other liberation movements.
But he was caught upon his return.
He was. Arrested, charged with leaving the country illegally, inciting strikes. Got 5 years in prison.
But worse was still to come.
Much worse. The Rivonia Raid in 1963. Police found documents, arrested other key ANC leaders at Lillieslee Farm.
And this implicated him, even though he was already in prison.
Yes. It linked him and the others directly to sabotage plans. led to the Ravonia trial.
And this time the stakes were even higher.
The death penalty was a very real possibility. They were charged with sabotage, conspiracy.
But he used that trial too, his speech from the dock.
An incredibly powerful moment. He laid out the case against apartheid, reaffirmed his commitment to a democratic, free society.
And famously said he was prepared to die for that ideal.
Yes, those words echoed around the world, really captured the essence of the struggle.
The verdict.
Guilty. But they were sentenced to life imprisonment, not death. International pressure likely played a big part in that.
A small mercy, perhaps, but still, life imprisonment.
As they were led away, they raised their fists, a silent salute. He became this huge global symbol of resistance.
And then Robben Island, 1964, the start of decades of imprisonment.
The conditions there were brutal, deliberately harsh, designed to crush their spirits. Isolation, hard labor.
Yet somehow it became something else entirely.
It did. It transformed, became known as the University of Robben Island.
Prisoners educating each other, keeping the struggle alive intellectually.
Exactly. Maintaining dignity, organizing themselves, even negotiating for better conditions within the prison walls.
And he refused conditional release offers.
Consistently. If it meant renouncing violence or endorsing apartheid in any way, he refused.
The isolation, the limited contact, the sheer length of time, it's hard to comprehend.
Decades. But his resolve never seemed to break. And outside, the world was changing.
The Free Nelson Mandela movement was growing.
Massively.
Yeah.
Becoming a huge international campaign. Concerts, protests, political pressure mounting on the South African government.
Then he was moved off Robben Island.
In 1982, to Pollsmoor Prison, then later to Victor Verster. These moves signal something was shifting.
The government starting to think about negotiation.
Secret talks began, clandestine meetings while he was still imprisoned.
And even in those talks, he held firm to his core principles.
Absolutely. Equality, justice for all, a democratic South Africa, but also, crucially, reconciliation.
Believing that was possible, even after everything.
That belief seems to have been incredibly deep. And finally, February 11th, 1990.
Release. After 27 years.
An unbelievable moment. Hugely symbolic. The beginning of the end for apartheid.
But walking free wasn't the end of the struggle, was it? It was the start of a new, incredibly difficult phase.
A monumental task lay ahead. Dismantling apartheid, building something new, all while the threat of civil war loomed large.
So the negotiations began almost immediately, with President F.W. de Klerk.
Delicate, complex negotiations. At the same time, he had to work to unify the different liberation movements.
And there was violence during this period?
A lot of violence across the country. A very volatile, dangerous time. It really tested his leadership, his commitment to peace.
But he stayed the course, believed negotiation was the only way.
He remained absolutely steadfast, believed it was the only way to avoid complete catastrophe.
And what was he advocating for at those talks?
Non-racial democracy, human rights protected for everyone, and always that theme of reconciliation.
He traveled the country, speaking to people.
Tirelessly, urging people to resist vengeance, to embrace a shared future, even with former oppressors.
That must have been an incredibly hard message to sell sometimes.
Immensely difficult. The negotiations themselves over the new constitution, the democratic framework, were grueling.
So much at stake.
Everything was at stake. And then, in 1993, the Nobel Peace Prize.
Jointly with de Klerk, recognizing that difficult partnership.
Yes, acknowledging the courage it took from both sides to move towards peace.
And then the moment everyone had worked toward for so long, April 27, 1994.
South Africa's first ever fully democratic elections.
The hues, the images, just overwhelming joy, right? Black South Africans voting for the first time.
A profoundly moving, historic day. And the result?
He was elected the first black president of South Africa.
His inauguration, May 10th, 1994, that officially marked the end of apartheid, the dawn of a new era.
As president, his focus was on unity, serving everyone.
Very much so. And a key part of that was championing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
A controversial idea in some ways, but aimed at healing.
Exactly. Promoting healing through truth-telling, confession, amnesty, forgiveness, essentially. Trying to break that cycle of hatred.
And his personal gestures spoke volumes too, didn't they?
Absolutely. Inviting his former jailers to the inauguration. Supporting the Springboks rugby team during the '95 World Cup.
Reaching out to the white minority, showing they were part of the new nation too.
Vital gestures of magnanimity and inclusion. Of course, the challenges were enormous.
Poverty, inequality left over from apartheid, crime.
Huge structural problems. But he made another significant decision regarding his presidency.
Stepping down after one term.
Yes, modeling democratic restraint, ensuring a peaceful transition of power. A powerful example.
And after leaving office?
He became this revered global elder statesman, a powerful symbol of forgiveness, reconciliation, still advocating for peace and justice worldwide.
His passing in December 2013, I remember the global reaction.
A huge outpouring of grief, yes, but also celebration. Of a profound appreciation for this incredible life that really did change history.
When you look back at the whole arc, from that small village
to leading a nation away from the brink of civil war, this is extraordinary, driven by this deep faith in the human spirit.
maybe his greatest legacy, then, is teaching us about freedom, what it really demands.
I think so. A freedom that isn't about bitterness or revenge, but about courage, about resilience,
Yeah.
about that unwavering hope for a shared humanity.
So as we kind of sit with this story, the themes that stand out are just immense. Resistance, resilience.
Leadership, definitely.
Yeah.
And the transformative power of hope, and maybe above all, reconciliation.
His life really is a testament, isn't it, to how one individual, through sheer courage and commitment to justice, can shape history.
Even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, the lessons are profound.
Especially that lesson about forgiveness, how crucial it is if we want to overcome really deep divisions in society.
It continues to challenge us today, doesn't it?
It really does. Which leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about, perhaps.
How can we take the wisdom from his journey, those hard-won lessons?
And apply them in our own lives, in our own communities. How do we continue that long walk towards a world that is truly more just, more equitable for everyone?